challenges. The global shocks that we've experienced in the last couple of years, particularly around climate, pandemics, and conflict, those disproportionately affect women and girls. Some of it is stigma against educating girls, biases against women-led businesses, and also mistaken perceptions that women are riskier investments than their male counterparts. Discriminatory laws and harmful cultural practices such as unequal property rights and inheritance rights, and child marriage and gender-based violence, often happening within the home. These work against women's ability to thrive and to succeed.
Melinda Gates famously said, "We can't just talk about empowering women without actually making sure they are gaining power in their families and in their communities." So Graham, we know that at the Visa Foundation, you're focused on women gaining power. So from your perspective as a major investor in gender equity, what are some of the interventions and work that's most important?
Because we knew that the implications of this pandemic would be most felt by those that have historically been left behind or excluded or extracted from. And so while we, yes, responded with the emergency sort of frontline health worker support, what we also did was send a message to our partners, both existing and future, that we are here for the long run and that we are fundamentally about working to deploy capital in support of small businesses led by, run by, owned by women and people of underrepresented populations. Because, in fact, as I said, they're the ones that will be most impacted. So what does that mean and where are we today? So that was roughly 2.5 years ago. And we made a commitment to launch an initiative which we call our Equitable Access Initiative, which is a $200 million 5-year commitment to support small micro businesses, deploying about $140 million in private market capital and $60 million in grant support to NGO partners. And that was a grand vision for us. We were a startup, and it was the headwinds of a global pandemic. But the story thus far, and again, we're halfway there, is that we've deployed, just now I want to spend more time focusing on the investment side because of the crux of your question. We've invested $100 million in that 2.5-year period into intermediaries or fund managers. So we do not do direct investments into small businesses. We don't have that capacity. But we also believe that there's a ripple effect when we invest in partners. We have deployed that $100 million, 100% of it, into funds or other intermediaries controlled by women and or underrepresented individuals. And why does that matter? Well, ultimately it matters because what matters is the power and agency one has when they control capital. That is our theory. There are a whole lot of other issues. You laid them out. This discussion today lays them out. But for us, being focused and having a theory of change is fundamentally about control of capital. And I know many of you are familiar with the statistics broadly, but I'll speak to the United States. Of the roughly $70 trillion in wealth that exists in the United States, give or take, this is a GAO study that was done some years ago, 3% of it is controlled by women and 1% of it is controlled by people of color. You cannot have power and agency if that is all the capital that you control. So ultimately, who writes the checks?
We deploy strategies and interventions to make capital flow in the hands of women and our women entrepreneurs, so that's the access to capital piece. We support women with wraparound services in terms of training and build their capacity to really understand what entrepreneurship is about. And please know that in some of these communities, women would prefer to get a job, but there's no jobs available for them. So the entrepreneurship is their only opportunity and chance of making a living and putting food on the table. And then the third piece is access to buyers, access to markets, because whatever they produce, whatever they generate, there needs to be a buyer at the end of the day who pays them for the work. And perhaps the best way to illustrate the work and take it from the theoretical more into the space of, this is how it feels like. I should share the story of one of our clients. So Linda is a successful woman entrepreneur today. She is a baker, has 2 bakeries. She's the employer of 67 people and has 3 kids. They all go to school, and she's got to be a success and a role model in her community. But her journey has been a pretty difficult one, and one that started with losing her father at the age of 13. She had to drop out of school and support her mother in raising the family and putting food on the table. Didn't have any type of assets. Her mom and Linda were pretty much living in a rented property. Didn't have any real means of making a living. And the only real skill that they had was they knew how to make bread. So our entrepreneurs, our women entrepreneurs, are so resourceful that from that one skill, that one idea, they started a business on the side of the street in Medina Market in Accra, where they started baking bread. They were selling 40 loaves of bread every day, but there was demand. They could make more, and they couldn't get the capacity up. They could not get the capital because they were locked out. They didn't have the assets. They didn't have the collateral to guarantee for a loan. They didn't have the knowledge on how to ask for capital to go into their business. So this is when opportunity gets into the lives of Linda and her mom. We mobilize grant funding that we use as incentives for the financial institutions to actually serve the women clients we care about. So we find the financial institution partners where we deploy funding in the form of guarantees, collateral buy-downs, all sorts of other financial innovations and instruments so that the capital actually ends up flowing into the hands of Linda. So Linda was able to qualify because she was not asked for the 20% cash down guarantee collateral. She was able to qualify for the loan and was able to buy 3 more ovens, and then she was able to produce a lot more and then expanded and grew into 15 other markets and so on and so forth.
At Opportunity International, we want to encourage women, we want to enable women, we want to empower women, but most of all, we want to convey power to women.